ChurchMilitant.tv would like to extend to you an invitation to participate in the first annual Bishop Fulton Sheen Gala being held on April the 5th. And get this, the dinner is both real and virtual. For those not able to attend in person, we will be live streaming the dinner. Now, if you're asking yourself, how can I go to a dinner over the internet? Then just click on the attached link. Please make it a point to check it out. It will be the first ever of its kind in the world, all in honor of Bishop Fulton Sheen, and in an effort to bring Christ to the internet. Just click on the link. God love you.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Vortex, where lies and falsehoods are trapped and exposed. I'm Michael Voris. Here's a screaming siren, red flashing lights, well in advance warning to all faithful Catholics. Someone is going to kidnap the Pope. How do we know this? Because he is the perfect candidate for kidnapping. You see, he is a Jesuit, ordained in the 1960s in the hotbed of South American liberation theology during the halcyon days of social revolution, not to mention rejection of the church. He is simply too tempting a target for modernists and liberals in the church to let slip out of their hands. They will quickly try to refashion, restyle him as their Pope, the social justice Pope. The Pope who has laid aside all that tradition, yuck, and brought a breath of fresh air to the church, out with the pomp and circumstance of office, as well as the supporters of pomp and circumstance, who are conveniently, also quite frequently, the biggest supporters of that tradition with a big, fat, capital T. See, the liberals and modernists in the church, the ones who don't really believe in the church for what she really is, like to use the church as camouflage to push their own agenda for so-called social justice. They cry great big crocodile tears for the poor, but don't really care about the poor at all. It's why Archbishop Sheen referred to them as those who have Judas as their patron saint, the patron saint of social justice. So they pretend to be Catholic, all the while working furiously and feverishly to dislodge the church from its actual mission of saving souls. They juxtapose the church's earthly work against its spiritual work of announcing the truths of salvation, including the moral truths with regard to human sexuality, most especially those truths. And they have made hay for decades now, distorting church documents and even papal encyclicals, beginning with Pope Leo XIII's Rerum Novarum, and presenting them as a near-church-sponsored crusade for socialism. And they have always looked for champions for their cause. And all of a sudden, out onto the loggia overlooking St. Peter's Square last week, steps none other than, for them, what could be considered nothing less than a godsend. Pardon the pun. His apparent humility, his background, his seeming eschewing of the trappings of office are all perfect ingredients for them to cook up a story along the lines of, at last, a Pope of social justice. And of course, all over the Western world, in dens of modernism and heterodoxy, the subtext is already being written and circulated as talking points that Francis is a man of the people. The quiet implication, of course, being that his predecessors somehow were not men of the people. Look, he rides on the bus with them. He won't wear those gaudy red Prada shoes. He lived in a tiny apartment instead of a palace. Even whipped up his own simple meals in his little Spartan kitchen. The subtext is this: since he rejects all that tradition, namely the trappings of his office, then he also rejects all tradition, like the church's teaching on contraception, women priests, same-sex relationships, etc. Now, of course, not one word of that is even close to the truth, but truth has never gotten in the way of the work of the demonic or the diabolical. Which is why what Pope Francis said at his first Mass, his first homily, the morning after his election, is so massively important. Quote, "If we do not profess Jesus Christ, things go wrong. We may become a charitable NGO, non-government organization, but not the church, the bride of the Lord. When we do not profess Jesus Christ, we profess the worldliness of the devil, a demonic worldliness. When we journey without the cross, when we build without the cross, when we profess Christ without the cross, we are not disciples of the Lord. We are worldly. We may be bishops, priests, cardinals, popes, but not disciples of the Lord. Those are exacting words. First, he's aiming them squarely at the princes of the church. That's who was at the Mass. Second, they are blinding in their clarity. And third, the actual choice of the content. He's the Pope. He can give a homily on anything he wants, but he chose this topic to be his first homily, establishing a theme thereby of his pontificate. The message that work done in the church, apart from the mission of the church, namely bringing souls to Christ for their salvation, is the work of the demonic, a concentration on the worldly with a forsaking of the heavenly. From these earliest words of Pope Francis, it would appear he is nobody's fool. But again, that won't stop those modernist progressive liars in the church who do the work of the diabolical under the cover of concern for the poor from trying to kidnap Francis and present him as the Pope who has no regard for tradition and has placed all his papal eggs in the basket of fighting poverty. The Holy Father has made clear that he wants to use the church to not only help lift the poor out of poverty, but most importantly, and underscore this, most importantly, to lift them into heaven. Keep this first homily of Pope Francis in the forefront of your mind. If the aged peace and justice hippies in the church are true to form, you will have to refer to this homily time and time again in trying to prevent the kidnapping of a pope, like they kidnapped the message of the council from 50 years ago. His homily is easy to remember. It was his very first homily, and we've attached the link. God love you. I'm Michael Voris.
Sick of TV and its cultural rot? Tune in to churchmilitant.tv and become a premium subscriber, where you will get access to fresh shows with solid church doctrine. As a premium subscriber, you'll get hundreds of hours of programming, which includes investigative shows, catechesis, apologetics, church history lessons, and a lot more. What are you waiting for? Forget the bad television and dive into the riches of the Catholic faith for only $10 a month.